Hi, Assalamualaikum. I'm Norwan Suryani binti Abdul Aziz, metric number 2012990. And my partner is Aiman Nur Nabila binti Anwar, Nur Sakinah Habibah binti Ahmad, Shafiqah Nadira binti Sharif. So I will be the first speaker to talk about our introduction, the demise of Sultan Mahmud II. Sultan Mahmud Shah II, or better known as Almarhum Kadi Julan, is the 10th Sultan of Johor. Sultan Mahmud II was born on 20 July 70,085. He was the last descendant of Raja Fatimah, granddaughter of Sultan Alauddin Riayat Shah II, the first king who was an open Johor Lama in 15,030. He was appointed Sultan as early as 10 years old to replace his father Sultan Ibrahim Shah in February 16,085 after his father's death due to poisoning by his mother. Sultan Mahmud Shah II himself was the son of Paduka Raja Abdul Jamil. Although in principle Sultan Mahmud Shah II was appointed as the legitimate Sultan of Johor due to his age being too raw and young to lead the government, then his mother was to lead the government. But the individual who actually controlled the administration of the Johor government at that time was Paduka Raja Abdul Jamil. 16,088, Sultan Mahmud Shah II was appointed to lead the state administration absolutely after the Bendahara Seri Maharaja succeeded in expelling Raja Abdul Jamil from the state of Johor. Sultan Mahmud Shah II carried out state government affairs with the assistance of the Bendahara Seri Maharaja, who was skilled in the intricacies of Johor state administration and foreign affairs. To start with, the fall of Malacca in the hands of the Portuguese government on August 24, 15,011 did not mark the end of the general administration of the Malacca Sultanate. The starting point here, Johor is said to play an important heritage as Malacca Sultanate connector as the Sultan of Malacca, Sultan Mahmud Shah II, Sultan Mahmud Shah I is said to have fled to Johor and built a kingdom based in Pago after Malacca fell to the Portuguese. Sultan Alauddin Riayat Shah II also was the first king who opened the Johor Lama in 15,030. The kings who descended from the Malacca Sultanate, viewed as no ranks to lead the Johor, even had to deal with various threats from countries such as the Portuguese government and also Aceh. Competition in terms of trade, expansion of power over the vassal states, and the spread of religion are seen as the main factors that lead to competition between the governments of Johor, Malacca, and Aceh. The reality, though, the Johor government is seen to have received great pressure from the government of Aceh and the Portuguese in Malacca, but the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Johor under the administration of the kings descended from the Malacca Sultanate was still able to retain sovereignty can be maintained until the reign of the last king of the descendant of the Malacca Sultanate, Sultan Mahmud II, in 16,099. The deceased was raised. After ruling the Kingdom of Johor for 14 years, finally on Friday, August 16,099, there was a historic event in the state of Johor, namely the assassination of Sultan Mahmud Shah II in Kota Tinggi. The death of Sultan Mahmud II was associated with his cruelty, which eventually consumed himself. The starting point here with the death of Sultan Mahmud Shah II, then cut off, and the genealogy of the sons of Raja Johor Malacca Sultanate's leading throne of Johor. In Hikayat Tufa an-Nafis, Raja Ali Haji described that Sultan Mahmud Shah II did not have children because the Sultan had married a fairy who was a jinn descent so that he did not cohabit with his other wives. Before Sultan Mahmud Shah died, he had uttered a curse that sounded of Bermanson, if you set foot in Kota Tinggi, you will vomit blood. These words were the last of Sultan Mahmud Shah to Megat Seri Rama, um, Laksamana Bentan before he died. The story of this tragedy has been told continuously from one generation to the next until today. In reality, this event is not just a folk tale that is worked on for the purpose of mere entertainment, but this story is a real event that has been acknowledged as authentic by foreign and local historians. In fact, the assassination of Sultan Mahmud Shah II is not just an ordinary event, because through analysis of need that was done, I found that this event has brought a major shift towards a historiography of Malaya in general and the historiography of the state administration, especially underscoring of this event, said the government administration Johor has changed. Hence, a bloody reign of the Malacca Sultanate treasurer to the king's descent. So, the government of Johor had to build a new political and economic system that had been destroyed by a strain of crises internally that we are going to discuss about in this topic.
Before we proceed to the death of Sultan Mahmud II, as well as the aftermath, let's have a glance on the history of Johor dynasty. So, after the fall of Malacca Sultanate due to the Portuguese invasion in 1511, the last heir of Sultan Malacca, which is Sultan Mahmud Shah, has founded a new government in Johor and Perak. And the government of Johor, which governed by Sultan Alauddin Riayat Shah, had to rebuild its political and economic system since it had been devastated by a series of internal crises among the royal family and the dignitaries. And during the early stages, it is not easy because apart from the internal crisis, the Johor government had to deal with the imperialist rivals such as Portuguese and Aceh in order to restore its glory days. Fortunately, by the wisdoms of Johor's leaders in making political decisions by establishing diplomatic and trade ties with the Dutch East Indian Company or VOC, has given the growth of Johor as a new political power a new dimension. And as a result, it is not surprising that in 17th century, Johor was able to consolidate its power over the territory that had previously been under Malacca's control. Regions like Kampar, Bengkalis, Unggaran, Karimun Island, Pulang, Bentan, Yaolinga Island, Pahang, Terengganu, Siak and Rokan Indragiri are now part of the Malay Sultanate of Johor supremacy. And from the economic point of view, the free trade practiced by this government has propelled Johor to emerge as an economic power in Malay archipelago. Apart from that, Johor also has been successful in its glory days, dominating the tin mining sector through a series of agreements trade with the tin-producing countries such as Beruas, Bernam, Selangor, Manjung, Kelang, Perak and Kedah. And Johor also emerged as a power economy in the archipelago, thus becoming a duri dalam daging to the economy of Malacca and Betawi. Nevertheless, the Johor government, which was under the leadership of Sultanate dynasty Malacca, was only able to survive for 171 years. Murder Sultan Mahmud by Megat Seri Rama in 1699 has witnessed the end of the Jurai of Bukit Siguntang legacy in the genealogy of the Malay Sultanate of Johor.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aminur Nabila and I'm gonna proceed with the next presentation, which is the death of Sultan Mahmud II is on in Hikayat Siyah and Tufat al-Nafs. Sultan Mahmud II is known as the sole heir of Sultan Ibrahim Johor. After the demise of Sultan Ibrahim, Johor was ruled by the Paduka Raja Abdul Jamil, which was the Laksamana for several years, and continued by Bendahara Seri Maharaja Tun Habib Abdul Majid until 1697. The death of Bendahara led to Sultan Mahmud Shah II to accede the throne. At the age of 17 years old, Sultan Mahmud Shah to exhibit indecent behavior that made VOC believe that the young Sultan to be unready to rule the country. Apart from VOC, a sea captain who visited Johor named Alexander Hamilton has witnessed Sultan Mahmud Shah indecent behavior. Hamilton had to give a Sultan, which is a pair of screw barrel pistol, but Sultan used it to shoot someone on the street. In addition, Hamilton stated that Sultan Mahmud continued to practice tyranny and brutality style of leadership. The main component of this story that I've been told that Sultan Mahmud was known as a ruler who was uncontrollable, and the actions and behavior of Sultan Mahmud was known as a rule as to be the action and behavior. The action and behavior of Sultan Mahmud causes him to be murdered by a group of noble people in 1699. The death of Sultan Mahmud Shah II has been mentioned in these two texts, which are the Hikayat Sia and Tufat al-Nafs. Both of these texts has become a standard for how the death of Sultan Mahmud II was to be viewed in the Malay world for the subsequent generation. According to Hikayat Sia, it mentioned that the reason why Sultan Mahmud Shah II was murdered is because he brutally killed one of the noble people's wife, which is named Dang Anum. The Hikayat Sia is a variant of Sulalat al-Salitin that was published as Malay Annals that helped to trace the origins of an Eastern Sumatran polity through Johor, and use the death of Sultan Mahmud as an event in the development of the polity. So back to Dang Anum. Dang Anum is the wife of Megat Sri Rama, which is a high official, and Dang Anum is currently pregnant and craves for a piece of jackfruit which has been reserved for the Sultan. Sultan Mahmud Shah was angry when he found that Dang Anum had eaten a piece of the jackfruit, and then he assumed that Dang Anum had degraded his dignity as Sultan. So what he did is he ordered the arrest of Dang Anum and wanted her stomach to be split open because he wanted to see if the child in his womb was eating jackfruit. So after they opened they split the stomach, they found it that the child hand there is a piece of jackfruit. Unfortunately, Megat Sri Rama is still not aware that his wife and his unborn child has been killed by the Sultan Mahmud II, and because he's still on the duty on a military expeditions. So once Sri Rama has returned to Johor, he learns of the death of his wife and also his child in a tragic way, where he decided to commit derhaka and then planned to kill Sultan Mahmud Shah II. So he made the bendahara and then told that he wanted to commit derhaka due to intolerable rule under which they have been living, and then the bendahara discussed with the noble people and agreement reached, and Megat Sri Rama will be allowed to commit derhaka. So the first plan is he would like to eliminate Sri Bijawangsa, who is known as the Sultan's strongman, by telling that Sultan believe he wants to commit derhaka. However, Sri Bijawangsa was ashamed of the incident and then let himself to be killed by the Sultans. So after successfully eliminating Sri Bijawangsa, the noble people proceed with the next agenda, which is they want to eliminate Sultan Mahmud Shah II. So Sultan Mahmud Shah II was killed during his way to performing Friday prayers. However, Megat Sri Rama was hit by the Sultan's Keris and struck between his toes. Megat Sri Rama did not die immediately, but he was suffer for about 4 years 4 years because of that. And people believe that it is punishment for Megat Surama actually for committing the haka towards Sultan, even though that Sultan the one who killed someone, but it's just punishment for Megat Surama for committing a derhaka at that time. Next is Tuhfa al-Nafs. So Raja Ali Haji is actually the author of Tuhfa al-Nafs, which is Tuhfa al-Nafs is a transitional text in Malay literature. He used the Hikayat Sia as a reference and comparing with another sources, and then he able to come to create with another version of the murder that reflected the aims and the concerns of the middle of 19th century in Riau. So in these versions, the Sultan dies immediately, which is different from what have been stated in the Hikayat Sia. Megat Surama attacked Sultan, and then Sultan dies immediately, and Megat Surama also died immediately due to the courage that Sultan threw at him. So it differs with the Hikayat Sia story, which is Megat Surama did not die immediately. He able to live for about a few years after that, but in pain, in agony. So it's different. It's kind of different. So that's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Shafiqah Nadra, and I'll proceed with the impact on Johor's politics after the demise of Sultan Mahmud II. First, let us start with the reactions of Palembang and Perak rulers. So the stories about assassination on Sultan Mahmud II have been known up to the knowledge of Dash, which at that time, the eyewitness of the event has informed the Dash that the assassination had been carried out by a group of nobles, which included Bendahara. And these stories have spread widely and sparked outrage from a variety of parties. The hardest condemnations of the murder came from the rulers of Palembang and Perak, who shared with the kings of Melaka Johor the common lineage traditions of the holy kings of Bukit Siguntang. And to demand justice, they had appealed to the Dutch East Indian Company, or known as a VOC, to wreak vengeance upon those perpetrators for this heinous crime, but failed. Next to the appointment of Bendahara as a sultan, on the ground that the assassinated Sultan Mahmud didn't have a legal heir to replace him as a sultan, the conspirators were able to appoint a new ruler. So, in September 1699, Bendahara was chosen as a ruler of Johor with the title of Sultan Abdul Jalil Yahya Shah. Some texts attempt to justify this by pointing out that since the kings and Bendahara of Johor's family had frequently intermarried, thus this custom decreed Bendahara should ascend the throne if there were no suitable royal prince. And what's more important is that the coronation of Bendahara as a new sultan has begun the reign of the Bendahara dynasty in Johor and marking the end of the Malacca Sultanate administration. Next, the political conflict in the Johor government has actually happened as soon as Tun Abdul Jalil became the Sultan, and this can be seen in the reaction of the Malays during that time. As we all know, the Malays has imbued for centuries with the concept of the divine status of the kings of Bukit Siguntang, and it is impossible for them to easily accept the change order to the point that they had publicly said that they would rather serve the Sultan of Palembang than the usurper. And there are also the other groups claim that there were no more descendants of the royal house, which is Bukit Siguntang, and therefore there could no longer be a ruler of Johor. And beside that, this appointment also has caused a chaos in the area of Johor dependencies. The rebellions among the sea people have taken place, for example, in the province of Selangor and Klang in 1702. The Minangkabau people in the interior of Siak also revolted in 1705. A revolt at Rembau and Indragiri took place in 1706, and Batu Bahara and Delhi in 1707. In the capital city of Johor itself, there was a riot that erupted open revolt by two rich people and 400 people of Johor in 1709. So, these revolts continually disturbed the peace along the east coast of Sumatra, Delhi, Rokan, Batu Bahara and Indragiri, and also in Johor's peninsular dependencies of Selangor, Kelang and Rembau. And due to that, this situation has discouraged the commerce of Johor, which at that time was very popular among the traders, and they had started to seek an alternative market which benefited to the Dutch of Malacca. So now we move on to the other political conflict which involved the invasions of Orang Laut in Johor. Along with the political issue that happened in Johor, there were rumors said that Orang Laut wants to invade Johor. However, despite their initial displeasure at first, most of Orang Laut realized that they would have to accept the new regime or risk losing their dominant relationship with Malacca Johor Empire, which had lasted over 300 years. Thus, the majority of Orang Laut eventually resumed their previous roles under the Bendahara dynasty, but their relations to it were always weak. Orang Laut had played an important role in Malay political history, which by using their skills to guard the shipping lanes or steer traders apart, the Orang Laut helped to establish Srivijayan Empire from 7th until 11th centuries. Srivijaya also eventually succeeded by Malacca, whose power as a port similarly depended upon the loyalty of the Orang Laut. However, the role of Orang Laut in Malay history began to decline with the disintegrations of the Malacca-Johor dynasty.
In the discord situation, it added up with the news of arrival of Ayutthaya to the peninsula, which happened in year 17 and 9. So Ayutthaya was a Siamese kingdom that exists in year 1315 until 1767, which also considered as Thailand in the meantime. So after Ayutthaya came to the peninsula, they stayed in Patani temporarily, which bring their army to attack Johor, as the country is not at their base state. So Ayutthaya already had interest in Johor, as they want to spread their power to many regions in Peninsula. It also happened in the following year that Thai army invaded Johor dependency on Terengganu, which made Johor prepare for the next encounter from their opponent. However, the Ayutthaya army retreated to the east because of the change in direction where they are being attacked by Vietnamese in Cambodia. But although Siamese was no longer attacking Johor, the army was still considered as a dangerous potential for Johor. Regarding those cases, they need to rebuild the state for them to stay away from danger and any threatening sources, since they cannot afford to be attacked by any other party with the current state of their country. So, for Johor economy, the business was not doing much as the commerce afraid to even near to the port for trading. They failed to attract people to visit or trading since they were facing internal problem with their country. In order to keep everything back to normal, the leader made decision to search for a new placement which at Riau. This decision made by Sultan Abdul Jalil brother, the Raja Muda, as a first step, which they moved the capital away from Johor River to the island of Bintan, or can be called as Ulu Riau. It was originally Orang Laut places for shelter and rest when they returned to serve the new regime. In the brighter side, Johor have the ability to quickly recover their interport economy. This can be achieved as there were full contribution from their passionate line of leaders and from the experience that they have in managing the business from the past. At Riau, the Raja Muda began his initiative to recruit and interport and also utilize the advantages of their 641 alliance that have been made with Dutch in order to redirect trade away from Malacca. So the new port at Riau attract many traders such as Chinese, Armenian, England, Danish, Portuguese, and other nations. which is also enough to make VOC official envious toward the port. There were many advantages of this new place at Riau than their old capital place, where at Riau they have an attractive environment which attract people to visit this place and invest their time to come by. The strategic place of the Riau, which situated at the strategic crossroad of maritime traffic, also made it easier for international market to drop by for trading. To add up with its own attractiveness, the new placement of Johor was completed with good portage and stapling facility for others to use when they in need. Johor also have more than enough readily available credit, and not to forget the establishment of an administration that welcome foreign trader in order to ease the business transition for the international market. It is official that Johor new capital is Riau, which also becoming an essential Islamic center. This indirectly attracts sponsoring scholars from Gujarat and Arab world. So as a result, for these 2 decades of history, the Bendahara dynasty followed a well-established pattern and did not seem to deviate from previous practices. Even though they have their new placement, the Bendahara dynasty still conduct Johor using the same tradition as being conducted in Johor before to keep those traditions alive. According to Tufan and Nafis, Johor is wealthy and well known for history as well as its custom or language. As a Malay Muslim culture center and wealthy country, it may reimburse for the manner in which new regime had gained power. But enormity of the crime of the hacker had opened deep wound within the kingdom which no riches or status could heal.